Christian excusologist Frank Turek has what I would call an apologetics-induced, self-serving case of Godsheimer's. That's the condition of either genuinely or conveniently forgetting something about God, something crucial about his nature, character, attributes, etc., as a means of deflecting an otherwise serious problem with the concept of God or his alleged behavior. Let's take a look.
You're a Sooner and a Cardinal at the same time.
Yes, sir.
Look at that. Go right ahead.
I have a question about free will. So if God knows everything, then God already knows who's going to hell and who's going to heaven before he even ever created them, before he created the universe, before he created Adam and Eve.
Absolutely.
So with this viewpoint, how could we have free will at all if everything's already determined?
All right. Excellent question. Do you like football?
Yes.
Let's suppose you like NFL football, so you have DirecTV, so you can get, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. And NFL Direct Ticket, right? So you can watch all the games on Sunday. One Sunday you're away from the TV, but you record the games that you want to watch later. And let's suppose you're coming home that night and your friend texts you all the scores and you go, I didn't want to know the scores, but you know them now. And so you get home and you elect to watch one of the games. You already know what the score is going to turn out to be. Question, does that mean the players on the field don't have free will because you know the outcome?
I never.
Okay, they still freely doing what they're doing on the field.
The problem is they've already done it.
They've already done it. And God's outside of time. So from his perspective, everything has already happened, even though it hasn't on our perspective because we're in time. He's outside of time. So God knows the end from the beginning. That's how he can do prophecy, obviously. He's all-knowing as well. And just because it's already happened in his mind doesn't mean that he's causing us to do it directly. We still have free will. When God created you, if you're a believer, he knew you would be a believer. When God created Richard Dawkins, he knew Richard Dawkins would be an atheist. But you freely chose to be a believer, and Richard Dawkins freely chose to be an atheist. And so God is just. Just because he knows what's going to happen doesn't mean that we don't have free will. Does that make sense?
A little bit makes sense.
Okay, well, it's an analogy. It may not perfectly illustrate it.
Well, there's an understatement for you. Frank's analogy doesn't even slightly illustrate it because he's forgotten something crucial about God in this analogy. Frank has Godsheimer's. In his analogy, this young person gains his all-knowingness, knowing the scores of the various football games, by learning the scores after the fact from a friend who clearly doesn't know the term spoiler alert. The problem with this analogy is that the games have in fact in reality already taken place. They've happened, and there's no way to change what has happened. This is where the Godsheimer's comes in. Frank has conveniently forgotten that God is not just all-knowing, he's all-powerful as well. So God is neither seeing this reality after the fact, nor is he lacking the power to change what happens before the fact, in some future reality. And this leads us to a problem challenging the very coherence of an all-knowing, all-powerful being. If God absolutely knows what will happen, does he have the power to change what he perfectly knows will happen? If not, in what sense then is he all-powerful? Clearly, all the choices have been made already, and God is merely a fulfillment center, creating solely to actualize what he knows must be actualized. This is not a God with any meaningful freedom. To correct Frank's analogy, our Sooner Cardinal friend would have had to have known the results of the games before the games actually happened. And he would have had to possess the power to alter the trajectory of reality so that the games turned out differently. God's foreknowledge is determinative because it makes God create everything the way he created it, precisely so that those games would end as they ended in actuality.
It's a rigged system.
There was no other possibility. Omnipotence means that the omnipotent one is responsible for everything. There's no way around it. God knew that Jeffrey Dahmer would become a cannibalistic serial killer before anything even existed. Did God know that because Dahmer freely chose that? Of course not. He didn't even exist. God knew that because he knew all the various factors that would make Dahmer a killer and created the universe and Dahmer in just such a way so that those factors would become a reality. I played in rock bands when I was very young, 13, 14, with other musicians who were much older than me. They were into drugs, and so I got into drugs. Tried just about everything with the exception of heroin. Many of the drugs I tried were quite addictive, though. I even smoked for a good while. I quit it all in one day. Never got addicted to anything. Luckily. Thankfully. With a simple tweak, though, a change in some gene perhaps, I could have become addicted to any number of drugs. And I probably would have died very young. Either dumb luck or an all-powerful God decided that for me. Think about this for a moment. In God's mind, before time or anything existed, God knew all the choices everyone would make for all eternity, right down to the conversation Frank will have in heaven with his great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter some 967 trillion years from now. He knew all of it before anything existed and before Frank had the ability to choose anything, let alone choose freely. So who made those people? Us, in God's mind, before anything existed. Why did I have blonde hair, musical talents, and prefer chocolate to vanilla ice cream in God's mind? Before time, before anything existed. We didn't instantiate ourselves in God's mind before time and space existed, exactly as we are today, making the choices he knew we'd make. So who created us this way? Before we had any choice in the matter. And does that sound free to you? If Frank's God created the universe and you and me, he did so in just such a way as to align with that person who existed in God's mind prior to creation. Perhaps he had to in order to maintain his perfect knowledge. But he created you so that you would make the same exact choices here and now that you made in God's mind before time and matter even existed. Before you were instantiated and had any freedom to choose. With great power comes great responsibility. With all power comes all responsibility. If your God exists, Frank, free will be damned. Pun intended. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching.